This morning, remembrances continue in Georgia for the late President Jimmy Carter. He died a week ago today. Starting Tuesday night, Mr. Carter will lie in state at the Capitol Rotunda with a military honor guard. His state funeral is set for Thursday, January 9th at the National Cathedral. The former president's remains will then be taken back to Georgia for his burial. Jimmy Carter lived a life of service, but he grew up at a time when the law of the land was ruled by separate and unequal. Throughout his political career, Carter crossed that racial divide and cracked the door open to create a more inclusive America.
My young life, shaped by those I loved.
And a segregated society. That was Jimmy Carter's boyhood. He wrote about it in his book of poetry, Always a Reckoning.
Jimmy Carter had grown up with African-American playmates, for example. His mother, who was a nurse, delivered African-American babies.
Her brown skin fixed her in our segregated world, yet Rachel had an aura of a queen.
Rachel Clark is the woman Carter vividly writes about in his prose. She lived and worked on his parents' peanut farm in rural Plains, Georgia. It was Rachel, a black woman, who shaped the person the 39th president became. And according to the University of Virginia's Miller Center, when it comes to civil rights, Carter's legacy is layered. Not known for passing groundbreaking legislation, but rather it's more symbolic in how he pushed civil rights forward.
He really carries that through. He makes good on that promise as governor of Georgia, bringing blacks particularly into high positions of government.
As president, Jimmy Carter took similar actions.
And he developed this affirmative action program to get more minorities, people of color, and women on the federal judiciary, and he was successful at that.
He also exposed the world to a more diverse United States, appointing African Americans to prominent positions in his administration. Andrew Young as UN ambassador, Patricia Roberts Harris as the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and the Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare.
Not all was a bed of roses when it came to Jimmy Carter and civil rights. For example, coming up to his run for the presidency, Jimmy Carter actually opposed busing for school integration purposes. I think he genuinely thought it was not the best policy, but he also knew that that would appeal to white voters.
Before being elected to office, some might say Carter was silent on civil rights issues. But historians say in order to be a viable candidate in the South, he had to tread lightly.
Oftentimes, Jimmy Carter, more by his actions than his words, I think should be put into the category of a civil rights champion.
Once he left the Oval Office, he did not stop championing those causes. He and his wife, Rosalind, partnered with Habitat for Humanity to hammer the cause of affordable housing. And together they traveled the world to blitz build single-family homes. In June 1992, Carter came to Washington, D.C. to help volunteers and 10 families saw, hammer, and raise their own houses on Benning Road Southeast.
You know, we spent a lot on weapons, we cut back on housing, we spent a lot on weapons, we cut back on health care. And I think this is it's not a charity when you give a person good health and a decent place to live. It's a sound investment for our country.
It's an investment Jimmy Carter continued to make in service to his country in more ways than one to move civil rights for all forward.